Welcome back to Behind the Scenes with Devon Hawks Ludlow, puppeteer, filmmaker extraordinaire, polymath, multi-hyphenate here in Santa Fe. Welcome back, Devon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you asked me earlier about failure. Failure is something I'm really well acquainted with because it was such especially for let's be honest, Americans, that programming is like failure must avoid.
Yeah.
So when I had talked earlier about my failure being this moment on stage where I didn't want to be on there anymore. The failure, in my mind, what it is not that you didn't succeed in doing something you wanted to do, or you didn't succeed in some false narrative you had of your own life. The failure was that I kept doing something that I should not have been doing anymore. And that was a full realization of it. Like, I have committed a lot of time and energy to this kind of performance, and I don't have a love for it anymore. And so I shouldn't have been doing that. And that was a failure. Continuing to keep on a path because you think you ought to.
Yeah. It reminds me of the aphorism, we don't regret what we do, we regret what we don't do.
Close.
It's a little bit inverted, but I guess it's two sides of the same coin. You would, if you had stayed on stage there, you would have regretted the lost opportunity, the life you're living now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the idea is like, I've wrestled a lot the last 10 years with these ideas of what we're led to believe the word success means, what we're led to believe the word failure means, and that it pushes us constantly into these places where we're miserable and where our energy and our feelings are expended on somebody else's program for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from your own sense of integrity. It doesn't come from your own intuition. It comes from what you believe success to be. Hence the fascination with money or your job title to be the most superficial versions. But really, I think when we run into that feeling that what we're spending our time doing every day makes us miserable, but we have to keep doing it because otherwise we're failures, then that's, to me, a real failure.
Yeah, I think my onstage moment that you had was on a commuter train, a 1 hour long train ride from a Chicago suburb to a downtown office of an oil company. And the office had moved downtown, so that train ride was relatively new, but I was like in my 7th month of this commute, and it hit me that I don't want to be on this train, I don't want to be at that office. And it was exactly because of what you said, because this is sort of a script that I signed up for. I liked the treats, the carrot, the money, the benefits, the security. But there was something missing, and it's the self-direction, the self-authoring.
Yeah.
Which I think all artists are after. Is that the artistic temperament?
It should be a universal temperament. Following there's that cliche, like follow your bliss, but it's not for me, the idea isn't follow your bliss, it's follow your intuitive thread is what I have been calling it for the years. In a moment, whether what you're doing is the right thing to be doing. It doesn't mean you can't go to an office job and support something or go somewhere. The aesthetics of it or the situational part of it is not as important as what you authentically know within yourself at any given moment, which to me is like the source of a person's misery. So when I say don't be afraid of depression, that's because depression, which is something that I have in spades, isn't something that defines me or that I take as seriously as I do when I know that intuitive thread is off the main road. When those waves of depression come, it's like, oh, you again, you know.
Do you think collaboration, we mentioned in the main episode 10, that collaboration is a key strategy for you to produce and to bring new life into your art, but do you think it's an antidepressant? Bring new life into Devon's world.
That's a totally valid point.
Okay.
I think it is. Well, antidepressant in the sense that it cuts. Depression works best when you're isolated.
Yeah,
it's when it's got its most power. So when there's like 10 people in the room who are waiting on you to make a decision or are working with you on plastering something, it's really hard for depression to seem as all-encompassing or as powerful as it can when you're alone. And this is the danger in the post-production process when you really are isolated a lot more. It can become much more potent feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But again, because I've dealt with it long enough. And this is a totally advice I have given to students I have, because I've had a lot of like teenage students and interns and mentees who also have battles with big feelings. And I don't phrase it like this, but the idea I try to give them is when those waves of feeling of failure or depression, sorrow, ennui, all of those come, make friends with it and don't take it very seriously, because it will pass. And in fact, it can give you a whole different kind of energy. So use it and get acquainted with it like a friend, instead of, taking seriously your, uselessness in the universe.
So I've heard this advice, but
cheery talk.
No, contra opposed to don't take your highs so seriously either.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the scary one. Because are you sucking the enjoyment out of your own life? Like, if you follow that advice, like how do you appreciate accomplishment or victory and not take the highs seriously either?
Because if you're following your intuitive thread, those highs will either be authentic or not. If everyone's praising you in the moment, or you finish an episode, that sense of fulfillment is much more quiet and deep than is the momentary applause or something, to be cliche about it. So yeah, you don't take those as seriously either, which means that you don't build a fragile ego around your work.
Yeah.
Right. If someone tells you you're the greatest guitarist who ever lived, and then you want to keep hearing that praise, if you take it that seriously, and then you stop hearing that, then you start falling apart.
Then you got a huge problem.
Yes.
Yeah, the wisest thing I've heard on this is that confidence comes from the hard work, not from the results, not from accomplishment. It comes from knowing you've done work.
Yeah.
Not even the work. Not like the right work or the special work that turns out, but if you've worked hard, it like changes your biochemistry, I think.
It's very possible.
Yeah, it's the quiet, tectonic ego. So a long time ago in 2011, a movie called Archie's Final Project was released. And you have an IMDb credit from 2009 as the assistant to the producer. I thought this was a really interesting project. It won official selection at South by Southwest. Estimated budget $2 million. It's kind of neat that it's a blend of YouTube clips, illustration, home video style footage. It's, as far as I can tell, it follows a high schooler It's a high schooler documenting his own premeditated road to suicide.
Right.
Now, this is a long time in your past, and now we talked about your puppeteering and your own filmmaking some 10 years later. How'd you go from there to here?
Cool question, and thank you for digging that up. That was almost a great movie. God, we put a lot of energy into that because it kept almost being like, yeah. I could never even tell you now why it missed the mark. It's one of those things. Maybe it was something in the edit. Maybe it was something in the music choices. Maybe that it was so locked into a cultural moment. And it might have more resonance now that I say that out loud down the road. So worth checking out. But when I came back, I left New York, came back to Santa Fe, to make a long story long, and started working in the film business, doing production coordinating. So that's part of the work that was not artistic that I was doing. I was still in the world of the arts, but this was like, scheduling stuff, very administrative. Through that, I met a producer. We became friends. I showed him some of my writing, and he hired me on as assistant in a development company, like a boutique development company. So I read thousands of scripts and novels and all kinds of writing and did coverage, right? So that's the classic Hollywood starter job.
Can be very depressing.
I didn't have that experience. I enjoyed it a lot. I kept wanting to nourish all these writers.
Oh, cool.
And I learned a lot about people's, you can tell right away, it's funny in a script, you can tell right away if a person is trying to achieve a false goal, right? In their writing.
Okay.
You can see like, oh, you're trying to be like a simple example. And this happened all the time in the early 2000s. Everybody wanted to write like Quentin Tarantino. And you could see right away, you're trying to do this thing. This isn't your voice. This isn't the goal of this story that you're telling us. This isn't what the characters organically want in the story. We became very adept at seeing all of that. And we also nourished other people's projects, like Archie's final project's a good example. And I helped advise on funding certain things, like the Richard Linklater film Bernie, stuff like that. That would be like the feather in the cap.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of looking at other people's work, analyzing it, and giving notes to them, which is super valuable, by the way. If you have a structure where they want those notes, and your job is to give those notes.
Valuable to them or valuable to you?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on just how they react to your feedback?
Part of it is just reading or studying that much material gives you a really good, for yourself as an artist, it really helps you understand what works and what doesn't work. Technically, artistically, emotionally, everything. For them, it's invaluable. I mean, I loved giving people notes because it really helps them grow, right? As an artist, you can't grow without good critique. So that was what I was providing. And working for that company was a great experience in that side of things. Yeah, and Archie's final project also was very, I don't know, interesting guys who made it. Very good at raising money and trying to make their projects work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it struck me as ahead of its time.
It was ahead of its time.
Because I feel like this is a movie that would do great right now on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then when I found out it's 10 years old, I was like, oh, that might be why. Because it's a high schooler, like, sort of reporting on his own life inside a high school.
Yeah.
That's what every high schooler is doing right now anyways. So it's like very timely now. Maybe it could get a bump or a boost somehow.
Maybe it's worth revisiting. It has, but anyway, I don't want to get too much into that critique of the film, but yes, worth revisiting.
Yeah, exciting premise. So
they also did a bunch of work on Daniel Johnston, those same filmmakers. Another huge inspiring source. In terms of me, one thing I also learned was that it's become easy to spend a lot of time trying to raise money.
Okay.
And to focus on money. If I don't have money, I can't make a movie. If I don't have money, I can't do this. If it becomes an excuse, and it becomes a giant pit of your energy and time. And I have spent some time trying to raise funds for these projects, but for me, it's always been, you know what? The lesson learned there was work on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if these guys had worked on the movie maybe more, instead of trying to raise money, maybe I'll get slapped back for this. Maybe I should. But I feel like if they had focused more on that than on the money fundraising side of things, obviously the quality of that would have improved. And yet, of course, the feeling that you need to have the cash to do the distribution, to pay the actors, to do all this is important. So we, so far, have been able to do all of what we do on a volunteer basis.
Yeah.
Right.
45 volunteers on part 3.
That's right. I mean, it's awesome. It's amazing. And it blows my mind that these people would give time to something as absurd as what we're doing. But it's also hugely fun.
Can we reveal the total budget on air?
Sure.
It's quite meager.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. It's $3,000 for all 3
for all 3. Yep. We did $1,000 for the first one, $1,000 for the second one, and it was about $1,000 for the third one.
And so all of that money's on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Most of that, especially for the third one, went to like pizza. It was like buying pizza for the crew and fog juice. Fog juice is a huge budget eater. So, we use a lot of fog.
So
fog is great for miniatures.
Your criticism about investing too much time and mental energy into fundraising seems totally fair because you're living by that ethic.
Yeah.
Is that what got you out of LA and back to New Mexico?
Partly, yeah. The group I had been working with got detonated by money. I'll put it that way.
Money again.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lure of the cash turned a collaborative affair into everyone against everyone, where life was nasty, brutish, and short. Right.
What would you do for the next installment of The Love That Would Not Die if you had $100,000?
Well, this is interesting you ask this now, because this is as far as we can push it on the free side.
Okay.
Right? Like I can't ask people to keep giving their time and energy for nothing. They have to have some kind of remuneration, even though they get a lot of fulfillment and they love doing it. They keep coming back, and I love them. It's an awesome collaborative force, but people need to pay the rent, and I don't feel comfortable asking people to keep giving to this project without finding a way to support it. So we're in this moment where it's either like time to find the funding or to move on to different projects.
Okay.
And the funding, we have people who are really supportive of it. I mean, I'm saying because we have people, it sounds weird, but there have become a lot of people who want to support this and see it go to that next level.
Yeah.
Where there is a budget to pay all the artists, which is where all the money would go, incidentally. Like, we talk about $40 million for, the Happy Time murders. Like, that money didn't go into the puppets and the sets and the brilliant cinematography.
Just a few above the line people.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it shows. We use recycled materials. It's all built out of stuff we find. So the last episode, which looks amazing, all of our materials were found, except for we bought some tubes of paint and some hot glue sticks. Everything else came out of dumpsters.
Yeah.
And we were really lucky. There was a movie shutting down across the street. So movies just throw out tons of stuff. Amazing. Like just reams of like fresh boards and plywood. And we would just go in there. Jim Hayes and Patrick Boyles and I would just go in there and pull out stuff and then go make it into animal jail cells or walls or, Gomorrah Cosmetics or the new street or whatever it was. It was awesome. So even, no matter what the zillion-dollar budget, that's the aesthetic that it will continue to adhere to.
Okay. So you would, if you had 100K, would you just parcel it out all into wages to past collaborators, new collaborators? Would you try to get like a big name voice to sell online distribution? No. So you very much are anti self-promotion.
Yeah.
Capitalist.
I mean, if I hate that even a big voice, but if someone who was an amazing vocal talent who fit the character really well approached us and said, I really want to do this thing, then that would be, okay, we can talk. But it would never be I'm repelled by the idea of like hunting down a star to add value to a project.
You're embarrassing me because this is like my life strategy is to package my work with some young, like people who have gravity in the young scene amongst high school or college students.
If the person works for your project, if that person is just
be an
right,
artistic fit.
Yeah. That's the way it's always worked in the business. People will give you the money if Jake Gyllenhaal's in your film, and then it's a carrot stick. I don't know.
So do you imagine that more like an underwriting thing, since it's not going to be star driven? Someone in it for the long haul and not like a quick buck on a singular project.
That's the dream, right? Yeah. My signature influential artists had that, right? In the old days, it would have been like the Medici patron or something.
Ah, yeah.
But like Buster Keaton or Méliès or Jackie Chan all had people who backed them through their projects so that they had time to develop the stuff. And the result are these films that are timeless.
Yeah.
Do not age.
I'm happy you brought up the patron model. I've spent much of the last 3 years while I'm working at a restaurant dreaming about the patron model, particularly with classical music. I think part of it's a self-serving fantasy I have, but I think I want to hear your thought. It must create better art because you're unfettered by market demand. You can kind of do what Steve Jobs said about his iPhone is like you give the customer what they don't know they want yet. Mm-hmm. So as like an artist, you can just make what you feel called to make, and then you'll get timeless pieces. Do you feel like you could do that with puppeting if you just had a big grant?
Sure. For our work, that is a great model. Not all the work you're making, needs to fit that model. If you're making a cathedral where the whole community comes in and is doing it for the love of God, patron is a bad idea because very soon they'll want themselves in it, or they'll want to control it according to their whims. But if you can find somebody who believes in your work and believes in the work, then you have that time, right? There was a great little video series called Every Frame a Painting, and they had a great interview with Jackie Chan on there, and they were explaining how all his American films kind of suck, and they suck because they were driven by these time-based budgets. You have 2 weeks to shoot, that's all you get, boom. So it doesn't look as good, it's not as inventive, it's not as fun, the actors and performers just are not as connected as well. When he was working in Hong Kong with Golden Harvest and other backers, they gave him all the time he needed, and it ate into his budget, but it created these indelible moments. If you're talking about music especially, and something like classical music, which in some wavelengths fits into the realm of puppetry, I'll just go ahead and say, like, you have a niche audience, you have people who've worked a long time to get good at what they're doing. They're amazing, right? Technically amazing musicians. You have something it's a flabby term, classical. Like Philip Glass is classical, Bach is classical. Like, those are not nearly the same sounds that are coming, but they get lobbed into the same category. And I feel like those musicians are after something, different than the audience gratification. They want to explore different territories. And so for that kind of work, patrons are invaluable.
You're right. Yeah. Stir the emotions. Maybe in unwanted ways. That's what Beethoven was so remarkable for. The audience didn't receive him welcomingly early on. It put them off. And then we mentioned in episode 10, your main episode, that's how you think America's receiving puppets right now.
Yeah.
They're scary.
Yeah.
A little off-putting, but allows you to do some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been interested, the Dark Crystal thing just came out on Netflix, and people have had interesting mixed reactions. Personally, I feel like they could have gotten a lot darker with the puppets themselves. And aesthetically, they're using CGI, but too much.
Oh.
But it's my personal opinion. Other people could be like, yo, you are wrong, Devon. But that's just how I feel. It's also because I see, being in the puppet universe, I look at all these different puppeteers and puppet communities around the world. Thank you, internet. And see what can be done with it. And it's kind of phenomenal, right? Like, if anybody's listening closely, like, I would encourage you to Google the puppet companies in Syria that critiqued Bashar al-Assad. And have since disappeared, as in terms of what kind of political edgy puppetry looks like.
Yeah.
These little hand marionettes who are being tortured by an Assad puppet, it's like, just brings tears to your eyes. There's also, anyway, I'm not going to go on about different puppet series coming out, but I do encourage people to research it and check it out. Yeah. Middle Eastern puppeteers. Eastern Europe is like the heart for me of really intense, exciting puppet stuff. Taiwan has these amazing TV soap opera puppet shows that have been going on for years and years. They're amazing. They're like a cross between anime and telenovelas with puppets. It's like the most popular thing in the universe. So there's huge worlds out there to explore. In America, we're so isolated culturally in a lot of ways.
Well, it seems like maybe some of the puppet demand or thirst is getting replaced with substitute goods like claymation, stop motion.
Yeah, claymation, stop motion people also we use the word puppets for their creatures, but it's very different because it's a much controlled environment. I like the live action for us because of the lack of control, which is something else I very much cherish. But there's nothing, I love stop motion so much. Animation also activates a lot of the same, I guess you would say, brain receptors or something that puppetry does. Goes right to, your fight or flight instincts.
Yeah. What keeps you up at night?
Oh God, I love being up at night. That's my happy time. I'm one of these weird night people. I get my best work done between 11 and 2 in the morning.
Okay.
What keeps me up at night? What do I worry about? I worry about things that have nothing to do with the artistic realms.
Yeah.
In the moment, it's always like, I don't know, that chord progression doesn't sound good, or I need to fix that EQ, or that voice was wrong, or how am I going to work with that shot? Those things happen, but I've also learned to really trust my unconscious. And this was like the guy who was my original puppet teacher, Tim Juni, was big on this. We would rehearse and run into an obstacle. It's not funny. The joke's not working. And he'd be like, no, we're not going to work on it anymore. And I was like, but if we work on it, we'll get better. It'll fix itself. He was like, nope. And we wouldn't work on it for a week or 2 weeks. And then he would pop it out again in rehearsal. And suddenly, magically, we would have all these solutions to whatever the creative problem was. Our unconscious had been working on it constantly in the background. So, the lesson I've taken from that is kind of like that depression lesson, not to take it too critically. Especially on the songwriting side of things, I run into obstacles all the time because I'm self-taught. I don't have one of the great things about schooling is you get lots of tools to work with. And since I have a much smaller group of tools to work with, I run into lots of problems that take me a long time to work around. But it doesn't shut me down because I know that the unconscious side of me will find a solution. I just trust it to do that.
We had a stonemason come on, episode 1, Emmett McKinley. He's also a filmmaker, but he's was doing stonework in Montana, and he had the exact same sentiment. That is, when you can't find the stone that fits the place in the wall you need when you're doing a mortarless build, he said just walk along the river, forget about it, and then a few hours later you'll be like, oh my God,
yeah,
there's the rock.
It's important because you can get shut down if now you do writing. Writing, I think, is the hardest one of all those. Posing, performing, directing, editing, anything. As writer, you're really isolated, and it's you and the page or you and the screen, and it can be a murderous affair, and you can get subsumed by obstacles or complications. Your story's not working. Your characters aren't real. There's no emotional content. The dialogue sounds stilted. Whatever it is. And it can just crush you. And finding ways to trick yourself out of the seriousness with which you take your own work is really important if you're going to succeed in making something that's effective.
I love that. I'm just starting to realize that. Have the confidence to step away.
Yeah. Believe in your own unconscious, which is linked to all of us, right? Collective unconscious.
Yeah.
It's the part of you that's, that the internet was built to mirror in the human experience.
Fascinating.
Is that we're all connected in an unconscious realm. And so these ideas might come to you unexpectedly, and when you're not focused, only when you're not focused on it. It's a Tai Chi mentality.
Very good. We mentioned a few times that puppets are scary, and that is a hallmark of the form. So before we go, I want to know, Devon, what's the one puppet that comes to mind that scares you as a master puppeteer?
Puppet of my own or that I've ever seen?
Either or. Ever seen.
Jan Svankenmeyer's puppets are terrifying.
Okay.
And especially the one that he's got a couple. There's these stop motion like bones that he puts together, like dead birds and stuff. But the actually scary ones are from a film he did called Faust, which is where these big Sicilian style puppets, which are usually life size and made of solid wood. There's a devil and an angel that come down. They're genuinely scary. They're like, whoa. They can transmit. Puppets are totems, and they can transmit energies that are put into them, which can be very powerful energies. There was a Polynesian puppet maker who told me, be careful about what you build, because if you build a very nice house, someone's going to move into it. Did these puppets get imbued with energies? So that's one in film. In live performance, I've seen a lot of scary puppets. A guy named Hugo and his wife Inez used to do body puppetry. There was an old woman. They did body puppetry, just turning your body into puppets with like a piece of cloth or something. They did an old woman who was terrifying. And from my own set of puppets, we have a giant albino cave bat who lights up named Penny, who's got this mouth full of gnarly teeth. One of our interns named Fallon Reed built. And she can be, in turns, really sweet and really scary.